Okay, good afternoon. It's Sunday, July 18th, 2021. It's been like 8 days since I've been away from the ponds here, and the mute swans are still at the pond that they came to. They left the Swan Drama Pond. Looks like they built a nest over there. But the juvenile is there, and the mom and dad. All is good. I'm going to head over to the Swan Drama Pond and check out the trumpeters. But yeah, this is pretty cool. That's like the 5th nest that they built this year. But really can't get a closer shot than this. But we've had some pretty good rain the past number of days. So I'm gonna head over to where the trumpeters are and see what's going on there. Okay, back at the Swan Drama Pond. The trumpeters are actually on the original mute swan nest right now. Maybe they've been hanging out there since the mute swans have left the pond. But I wasn't able to see how many cygnets that they have. But going back to the video that I posted, it was interesting. That day, like it was the female trumpeter leading the charge, like with the 3 cygnets, and she was going after the mute swans, and she was the one that left and attacked the mute swans. Then a friend of mine, she was here earlier and saw like the attack going on, and I only saw what I could see from the time-lapse camera. But it was the female trumpeter that led the attack, and I guess like the male mute swan was really getting pummeled by the trumpeters. The male trumpeter ended up joining in on the attack, but I didn't get any video of it. It was like off the camera angle of the time lapse. But like about probably about 40 minutes later, you see the trumpeters return to their cygnets. You could see the cygnets in the time-lapse video, but shortly after that, the female mute swan with the juvenile were on the nest. Then when I arrived, the male mute swan was still in the grass over that way. Then eventually, after I set up my time-lapse camera for the next day, the female mute swan and her juvenile were on the nest. They got off the nest, and that was the last I've seen of them. Then they headed over to the other pond, and I was so shocked because the juvenile, he had one good foot and one bad foot, but he was able to make it across the road and into the other pond. Remarkable. But all is good here. I'm going to see if I can go check it out, get a little closer, and see how many cygnets they got. Might be hard to see, but the trumpeters are on the old mute swan nest. I'm not sure how many cygnets are there, but I brought my long pole, so I should be able to see. But it's kind of funny, the trumpeters are on the old mute swan nest. Looks like there's some feathers too. So it looks like the female is molting. I do see some feathers on the nest there. So hopefully when I go back to see my video, I'll be able to tell how many cygnets are still with them. Hopefully all 3 of them. but it's kind of like a hard angle right now to get a good view. But the interesting thing about the last day the mute swans were here, it was the female trumpeter leading the attack. The male trumpeter was about 100 yards behind her, and she was the one that was leading the attack with the 3 cygnets right behind her. Then with my time-lapse camera, all I could see was the 3 cygnets wading in the water, and to the left of the hill, that's where the mute swan was being attacked. The male mute swan, I assumed. And the male trumpeter, he ended up going in on the attack too. But a friend of mine was here during that encounter, and they were just attacking, I think, the male mute swan for a long time. Then I shortly arrived a little bit later, and that's where I saw the female mute swan with the juvenile all by herself. And it took me a while to figure out where the male mute swan, he was like sleeping in the tall grass, the reeds. Then when I set up my time-lapse camera again, changed the battery in the SD card, I was watching the video and I was expecting to see what happened, and it was just the female mute swan with the juvenile on the nest. They got off the nest and they went to the left out of camera angle, and then they were gone. They ended up going to the other pond. And it was remarkable because I could tell that the juvenile still had a bad foot, but was able to make the walk across the road and get to the other pond, get to safety. So I'll have to come back in a week or two, check out what's going on with these swans. But this is the top of the trail right here. I imagine the mute swans, they walked up this trail. This is the trail that I used all the time to get to the time-lapse camera right on the other side of the hill. They probably walked up here somehow onto this grass and made it like towards the direction of the pond, which is right over there. And it was interesting, the day that they left, a friend of mine was here earlier, and on my time-lapse video I can see the female trumpeter. She was coming across the pond with the 3 cygnets right behind her, and the male trumpeter was about 100 yards behind her. It was the female trumpeter that was leading the attack. Then she flew and attacked on the mute swans right over here. And my friend was, she took some pictures of the mute swan getting pummeled by the trumpeters. The male trumpeter ended up attacking too, but it was off the time-lapse video. I couldn't see it. It was out of range. But that must have lasted for about 40 minutes or so. Then the trumpeters reunited and went back to their island with their cygnets. Then I came shortly later, and when I came, all I saw was the female trumpeter and the juvenile mute swan. The female mute swan and the juvenile mute swan. It took me a while to find the male mute swan. He was resting in the tall reeds and grass over there. Then I set up my time-lapse again. I recharged the battery in the SD card, and I ended up leaving. Then when I was watching the time-lapse video of that day, the last thing I saw of the mute swans, it was the female mute swan and the juvenile mute swan. They got off the nest, and the juvenile was struggling with its one bad foot, and they went over this way. Then that was the last I saw of them. Somehow they probably came up this trail that I made. You can't really see the trail whatsoever, but they came up here and they probably crossed down this way. They could have walked through all this, but I think they probably stayed on the grass right here. They went across the street, and it probably took them over 24 hours, I would imagine, with the bad foot of the juvenile to get to the other pond. But remarkable, just truly remarkable. And the trumpeters are, like I say, they're over on the nest of of the mute swans, the old original nest of the mute swans. Here's actually, wow, this is kind of matted down a little bit. I'm just looking to see if I see any other trails like matted down, because it'd be kind of hard for the mute swan to get through this stuff right here. Be a little difficult. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.